Greetings, Poke fans. Welcome back to Poke Relaxing, the most relaxing Pokemon channel on the YouTubes. Today, I wanted to do just kind of another sort of market update, looking at a few things that I didn't cover in my last one, and just kind of talking about a couple of pieces of content, a couple YouTubers in the Pokemon investing space that I've watched pretty closely. Posting some content that I wanted just to react to, give you my thoughts, because in one case I thought it was very interesting what was posted, and in another case I felt like I had to just sort of give you a counterpoint to what was raised. But first I want to show you guys something, because I think it's easy to believe that there's just like no deals out there anywhere, and we're all gonna die buying $300 Scarlet and Violet base booster boxes for the rest of our lives. But I just think there's so many different kind of ways to get deals, to find deals. I've certainly slowed down my purchasing a bit, but I continually spend thousands of dollars, probably $3,000-$4,000 a week, buying things that I think are pretty good deals. I really only buy things if I think it's a product that's going to go up in time, which is, let's be honest, that's most Pokemon cards, sealed Pokemon cards at this point. But B, it has to be a deal, over market. I don't just say, oh, okay, well, market price of, prismatic ETBs are $140. I think it's a great set in a 5-year, time frame. I'm just going to go pay market. I would never do that. I would always try to find the best deal out there, so that, I have a little bit of an edge if things should go downward in momentum or sideways, or not rise as fast as I would like. So I hope you guys don't give up on finding deals. Like these Paldean Fates mini tins that are in a kind of a 3-pack product with a Pokeball at Sam's Club that I talked about in my last video is kind of a prime example. Those deals at Sam's Club and Costco don't come about that often, but they do come about. And if you sort of watch for people talking about them on like videos like mine, or on other channels that do YouTube stuff or Pokemon stuff, you can luck into one of those deals every once in a while. And here's another example I was kind of excited about. I gotta tell you. So this box was found earlier today at Hobby Lobby, and I feel like them and like at least one other of the large hobby stores. There's Michael's, and I think there's one other I'm forgetting. I think they all carry Pokemon like a little bit. Most people are probably familiar with them having online stuff that sometimes shows up in these discords that track deals. But this box was $24.99, as you can see, and it was in like a glass display case, strangely. So actually somebody who knows I collect Pokemon sent me a picture of it and said, do you want this? And I said, and I saw the Fusion Strike on the front, and I said, yeah, those are $20, so whatever is in the back is worth it, or as long as it's something from Sword and Shield, is worth the $24.99. So I said, I thought they were going to be like Brilliant Stars or something. So I got this in my hands today after it was purchased, and in the back here you can see, if you have a good eye, there is an Evolving Skies pack, and I actually am not sure what that one is. That has a little green on the upper right, but I feel like It's definitely, it might be Fusion Strike. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't think it's Evolving Skies, but if it's two Evolving Skies, then this is like the deal of the century for $24.99, or like, basically $6.50 a pack. So totally crazy that this was out there. Trying to see what. So 2021 is the copyright on this. So this is probably something that came out in 2021 originally. But the Evolving Skies is $25 pack. These Fusion Strikes are 10 each, so that's 20. There's 45 in value plus whatever that is. If it's another Fusion Strike, God, I really want to know what that is now. I mean, I could just go look at the pack arts for Evolving Skies and see. Okay, now I'm sort of curious, you guys. I have to look. Let me bring you over. If we go to TCG Player, and then we go to Evolving Skies, and hopefully there'll be a like a collection of the packs. They often have like a listing for the. So this is kind of what I want, but for just the unsleeved boosters. Where you get, yeah, here we go. All right, so that's definitely not one of them. Because you can see the upper right is like this yellow color, not a green. But I don't think it's Fusion Strike. Let's try Fusion Strike. Let's see what those pack arts look like. Yeah. So I don't see. I don't think I see green. Yeah, it's all like black up in the corner. So I got a mystery pack there. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's I don't know, Vivid Voltage or something. But all right. Well, hopefully one of you like Sword and Shield experts will say, I know that pack. It's XYZ. And let us know in the comments if we can identify that pack. But if it's Sword and Shield there, it's worth probably at least $5 in sealed form. So, if you got 10, 20, 45, $50 in pack value, plus, I'm sure that's got a $2 value or something for $25. So, the deals are out there, folks. And I'm actually looking at a kind of a large play on some collector boxes that I found at kind of one of the places I shop frequently at online. I'm slowly buying out their entire inventory. But those are like, if you're talking about the Cleavor, there's a, oh man, I forget what there's two Cleavor collection boxes. One is like a premium and one is a super premium. And the super premium has 6 Sword and Shield era packs, 2 of which are Fusion Strike, 2 of which are Brilliant Stars, and 2 of which are Astral Radiance. And those on TCG Player go for about $35 to $38, which I think is actually not a bad deal, because those sold for $34.99 on Pokemon Center before they sold out not too long ago. So I think they have a lot of room to grow, and I have a chance to get them at an even better price than TCG Player, so I will probably jump on some of those. Okay, well, first thing I want to talk about, folks, is the Japanese market. I was thinking about Japanese cards because I brought a fair amount of Japanese cards with me to the card show that I was at this past weekend. And, like the English stuff, I sold out of quite a bit. And I sort of thought Japanese would be popular there because, there's only one card shop in town that does any Japanese stuff, and it's all like ridiculously overpriced there. So if you have an interest in Japanese, it's kind of hard to, it's certainly difficult to get it locally in a lot of places, particularly, kind of more rural parts of the world like what I live in. But even if you want to order it, yourself online, it's kind of hard to, find, a dealer that you think is reputable. And for some reason, I think people are imagining that Japanese Pokemon is more suspect than like English, which maybe there's some like validity to that because of the way they've constructed the boxes historically. But I don't know. I haven't really run into any like horror stories out there about people buying Japanese stuff. I certainly you can order from places or sellers on eBay that end up not delivering or whatever if they have low feedback scores. But in any event, I just think there's fairly little competition for those selling Japanese booster box products in a lot of places, including where I live. So I've been thinking about it a lot. I brought some things to the show with me, and they sold pretty well. So I felt like it was maybe time to stock up a bit. And I did place about a $4,000 order for additional Japanese booster boxes. I think I got like four or five different kinds. Some were like super cheap, and some were like the newest the Terastal set, which is the Prismatic Evolutions in Japan. Those are still quite expensive, but in any event, let's look at I want to look at the pricing and just sort of see where things are at, because I talked about Japanese Pokemon booster boxes maybe a couple weeks ago when things like started to. This was about 2 weeks ago, I think. Actually, a little more than 2 weeks ago is the sort of point where it was, the base of this current upward curve. But at the point I did my video where I talked about Pokemon stuff, Japanese Pokemon stuff, things were up a little bit, and I was very interested to see if, how long that would continue, if we would see things really kind of go nuts like they have been in English Pokemon for now, 8-9 months, or whether they would just sort of calm back down, and it would just be a blip. Well, the answer seems to be that they're, continuing to go up pretty markedly. This box here is Surging Sparks, Japanese. It's called Super Electric Breaker. It's got all the Pikachus in it. And the recent sales on this are basically all like high 60s. So it's basically, quickly getting to be a $70 box here. And I think when I bought these, I don't know, like 2 or 3 months ago, maybe 2.5 months ago, 2 months ago, I think I got them for like just under $50. And now they're already worth $70 almost on TCG Player. I was selling them for, I think, 65. Actually, I feel like I might have sold them for 55. I don't know why, but no, I think I probably would have done 65 on these. So yeah, I mean, these things continue to move up. Will they go higher? I don't know. I mean, to give you some frame of reference, the MSRP, I think, for Pokemon booster boxes in Japan is generally like $30 USD, whatever that is in yen. And, for a while in the last, or for most of like the last year, those boxes that came out at $30 kind of hovered, around $30 to $40, depending on which set we're talking about. So, not very exciting from a kind of investment marketing perspective or market perspective. And meanwhile, the US stuff, or the English stuff, was just really popping off. The 151 set did, at some point after release, I'm not sure how long it took, but it went nuts. And those boxes, I think, were like $200 or $300. But then they were reprinted, and in Japan, they expressly do reprints. They tell you when they're going to reprint them. They make the boxes available to distribution after they say they're going to reprint them, and it's actually a legitimate reprint. So they did that, I think, several times with 151, and they've really kind of pushed the price of it back down, but it's still $120 box, $130 box, something like that. Interestingly, I had like 5 or 6 of them with me at the card show I was at, and I had, I think, $110 on them, and I didn't sell a single one of them, which is kind of surprising because I sold just about everything else. Certainly sold all of my English 151 that I brought, and I had, pretty most of a $10 booster bundle display. I had, I think, at least one ETB. All of them sold for my asking price. I mean, knocked off a couple bucks here and there for quantity purchases on the booster bundles, but everything sold, 151, but Japanese did not. So in any event, super electric breaker Japanese seems to be going up. I thought I'd check another kind of low price box here, or a lower price box than the super electric breaker. This is Stellar Miracle, which is the Japanese version of Stellar Crown. When I first got into Japanese, whatever, 6, 7, 8 months ago, these things were dirt cheap. They were like $28 a box. I bought, I think, 24 of them. I still have a lot of them. And, look at the price on these. I mean, percentage-wise, at this point, if you get market price, I mean, these are $40 to $50. Here's a couple of low sales, but there's a 49 and a 48, a 49, 49.60. Here's a couple of 50s. Look at this, 55 here. So you can see they kind of maybe are on a slight downtrend, but I mean, basically this is a $50 box, again, that I was picking up for 28 bucks. That was from a wholesaler. So it was a little better than market at the time, but the percentage gain on, $28 investment to a $50 investment is like massive, right? It's like, I don't know what that is, 80% gain. So that's pretty huge. And I don't think you can ignore that if you're looking at avenues for getting into Pokemon investments that, have a good chance of going up. Now, one thing I will say is that prices at TCG Player do seem to be like quite high. Whoever sells their Japanese boxes at TCG Player, I think, is getting more than they would if they sold them just about anywhere else. So I haven't checked eBay, but I would guess that maybe pricing is a little bit lower there. And furthermore, there are a lot of, kind of independent sellers of Japanese product in the US that, do import and then sell directly to customers. And if you trust, one of those sellers, I think you're probably going to find pricing that's significantly better than TCG Player. So I think there's definitely some gains to be had by price shopping for Japanese product. But if we believe TCG Player market data, these are the prices that I think you look at to find trends. All right, next I want to look at Terrestrial Festival. This is an interesting one that started pretty high because there was just a ton of energy around it, and the forthcoming Prismatic English set that this is the Japanese version of. So it started about 80, mid 80s, which again for a Japanese booster box to start like kind of in pre-order land that high is pretty nuts. But then it released and it went down, and they did one reprint at least of this, and that really drove stuff down. But then you get to the point in January where the US stuff comes out, or you sort of approach that point, and it starts to go back up. But it has been sort of teetering. These were certainly over 100 at one point. I don't think the market price shows that, or this chart, because it wasn't long enough to like sort of make the average higher. And this doesn't. Well, let's see how far we can go back. I think we will see sales over 100 at some point, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back like way too many times to get like into, I don't know, 17, the release time frame of Prismatic, which was January 17th. So yeah, this is going very slowly. So I don't think I'll get all the way there, but I distinctly remember these going for over 100. And I know that like locally, they were selling these for $120, at my local hobby shop, and they went through probably, I don't know, 40, 50 boxes of these, like, hotcakes. So that's I think the effect of people, willing to buy something and wanting to buy it locally, if they can, and probably they wouldn't buy it at all otherwise. So anyways, this one's kind of holding steady, but I do think this is a quite a good long-term hold, because the more I've sort of been, thinking about it and kind of looking at people's analysis of prismatic evolutions, the more I think that set is likely to be the most valuable set in terms of cards in it of the Scarlet and Violet era. And if you compare the price of this box, for example, to like the Japanese version of Evolving Skies, which I think is called Eevee Heroes, that box is about $300+, and this one is $91. So I feel like in time this will be more valuable than Evolving Skies. Mark my words, maybe you're a disbeliever, but anyway, so I did pick up a few more of these in the order that I mentioned I made a couple days ago. I brought 5 of these to the show that I was at. Had them at $90. Sold like 2 of them for $90, and the rest of them, I think I gave $5 off the whole thing, because they bought the remaining stock of them, so they probably got them for whatever, $88, $89 a piece. But sold out of them pretty early on, and could have sold many more. And my distributor has these for, I think, $78. So worst case scenario, I can make a quick buck at the card shows with these, but I do think it's a good long-term hold, along with prismatic English stuff, which I'm going to talk about later at the end of this video. And by the way, this is probably going to be a long one, so maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, depending on what you like in your YouTube videos. Okay, the last Japanese set I want to talk about is Battle Partners, which just came out just like a week ago. This is the Japanese version of the forthcoming and unreleased US set Journey Together, which is the next mainline set that will have, full 36-pack US booster boxes, unlike Prismatic Evolutions, which did not have booster boxes. So a lot of people were excited about this, to see the arts that come from it. And I think that the read I'm getting, I think I probably mentioned this before, is that people are definitely imagining the set is way better than what they thought when it was first announced, and we only had a handful of images from it. There are some pretty cool looking cards in it. Should be able to see a bunch of them already. This Iono's Belly Bolt is the top card, and there's a bunch of other like trainer and Pokemon combo cards, as well as some pretty sweet individual Pokemon cards like the Articuno and the Salamence EX. Whale Lord, I think, is going to be pretty popular, and Ferret is pretty cute too. So I think there's definitely enough, desirable card content in this set to make it popular. The question is going to be, what production levels is Pokemon Company going to be able to do when this comes out in English. But for now, the Japanese product is interesting for a few reasons, right? So this was the first time where my distributor of Japanese stuff took the position that they weren't even going to offer pre-sales of this, because they had no idea what the market pricing would look like on launch date. And they saw what happened with Prismatic, and they said, it could jump $20, $30 a box in price on the day that it's released, depending on how much demand there is for it in the open market. Could be much lower, but they don't want to try to predict the price, so they're just going to see what the market does. So that's pretty crazy. Um, there was also, I feel like, shenanigans with some sellers who did do pre-orders, putting this up for pre-order at like 60 or 70 or even $80 a box. And then suddenly, as in the case of a pre-order I placed, said, "Oh, there was a payment error with your order. We can't fulfill it." Okay, I see. Price on your website is now jumped up by $30, and you seem to have it in stock. And by the way, my payment was completely valid, and it's on my freaking credit card account. So nice try. So you see some shenanigans like that, which certainly were happening with Prismatic Evolutions pre-orders, particularly um, with smaller sellers and not the big names like Walmart. But that was interesting to see for a Japanese set to kind of have that much popularity and that much rise in price prior to launch, that pre-orders were not being like honored, or they were hard to find. So now this stuff is out. We're starting to get a sense of market pricing. I think it's looking like it's a little over $100. There were some kind of high sales mixed in here. There's one for 120. I see the high over here says 130. But basically these are about 110 to 115 on TCG Player. My distributor did end up, having these in stock. I think they were actually under $90 there. So I got, a handful of boxes. I'm not terribly interested in holding this set long term. I think that this will get reprints. I think it will probably come down to, I don't know. I mean, probably like the Super Electric Breaker levels, which is like around $70, is where I see this ending up. So I really just got some boxes because I want to open them, and the kids want to open them to see what the cards in the next, the English set will look like, and they're just kind of for fun. So I'll probably, put some of those up for sale on my website too, for something less than market price, as pretty much everything on my site is. And if I sell some that way, then cool. But I don't expect to have many of these left in, a couple months. And I don't really want to hold a lot of these, certainly at the price that they're available at now. If they get down to, I don't know, $40, maybe I would pick a bunch up, but I don't know if that's going to happen, given the state of the market and the fact that Pokemon Japan, Japanese cards are, it's seemingly heating up. So we may never get back to the $30 to $35 a box price for sets, no matter how, how limited they are in the minds of some people. I did want to talk quickly about this set too. So you may have seen online, like PokeRev did a video opening some of this mainland Chinese set that they're doing. So they're calling it 151. I do think it has like some of the content from, Japanese and English 151, but it also has a lot of stuff that's not in those sets, including, I'll look at this one. Actually, I think I had this up in the next, including these cards, which are like these full art Pikachu. Looks like probably illustration rares. I think these are awesome. There's one with like Mew in the background. Here's one with Gengar in the background, a couple other Pokemon. And there's like, is it Wigglypuff? Something like that. And Psyduck. It's kind of crazy how I know like a lot of these names because, 78 months ago, not a chance. That might be Pidgeot right there. So anyways, I had to get some of this because my daughter is a huge Pikachu collector, and she is going to love these cards. And there aren't many like, cool looking full art Pikachus out there, at least not that I've been able to find. So anyways, this one's $69.99, but I bought like 10 boxes at $50 shipped from a US seller. I see right here is like $47.39 from a Chinese seller. So something like this, I'd want to look at. So yeah, 380 feedbacks is good. 98.7% positive is pretty bad actually for eBay. But I don't know. I kind of prefer to buy from a U.S. buyer who's certainly importing them from someone in China, but they can deal with the Chinese connection and the problems of getting stuff in from China. They probably have a pallet of them coming in and then can ship from there, whereas a little whatever one order package from China directly may have challenges getting here in a timely fashion. But anyways, I don't know. I think these are probably worth picking up a box or two, particularly if you're a Pikachu collector or you just kind of like some of these Asian novelty sets. And I thought I'd mention it because I feel like for under $50 a box shipped, it's kind of a easy, it's an easy buy that could go up fairly significantly, but it's not guaranteed. But I don't know. For me as the father of a Pikachu collector, I think it's an easy decision. But if you're not so into Pikachu and you think it's kind of risky, I totally understand. But I did want to talk about that because I think it's kind of interesting. This stuff. There's more and more sort of Chinese Pokemon stuff, mainland Chinese Pokemon stuff coming out, and I think it's a fair chance that it may be, or some of the cards at least, may be fairly desirable to the U.S. market. So we'll have to see what develops there. All right, let's get now to the kind of feedback, that this sort of commentary stuff I wanted to do. So I saw this video by this guy Vapor Self, who does some investment content, Pokemon investment content. And when I first kind of started looking at Pokemon content on YouTube, I watched a good bit of his stuff, and it was pretty useful sort of as a beginner. These days I don't really watch much of it at all because quite frankly I think like I have more knowledge and visibility into the market than he does, which is not to say he doesn't come up with things that I maybe wouldn't have thought of, but for the most part it's kind of stuff that is for me old hat or just not particularly useful. So I check out his channel, and if you find the videos entertaining, I think God bless, subscribe and support the guy. I have nothing against him. But this one video basically was talking about how you should have a strategy for what to do when the Surging Sparks reprint hits, and maybe you're saying what Surging Sparks reprint, what is that? Or maybe you're saying, oh yeah, I heard about that. We've been hearing about a Surging Sparks reprint for about the last month or so. And, my theory, which has yet to be disproven, is that reprints are fake. And that at least in the Scarlet and Violet era, there's never actually been a reprint. There has been a restock, but you have to define that in a particular way. But for me, a reprint or even a restock means that distribution, like, the whatever 10 or so authorized distributors of Pokemon Company International in the U.S. Have been, provided with, additional product for a set that they already distributed previously. So I have never seen that occur in the last year, even though people often refer to like the Temporal Forces, actually the Paldea Evolved reprint is a famous one that people like to talk about. And the way that Paldea Evolved booster boxes that were allegedly reprinted, materialized for me was that my distributor back when that happened, had a bunch of kind of crappy build and battle like sets and stadiums, and they had like these like sort of pre-built deck products and a bunch of other stuff that was then kind of, stuff they had a hard time getting rid of. Like, actually, one thing was Twilight Masquerade ETBs. Believe it or not, those were very hard for them to get rid of for a long time. So basically, they bundled up a bunch of the stuff that they, were wanting to get rid of at wholesale pricing, and they said, if you buy all this stuff, this bundle of stuff, we'll give you two booster cases of Paldea Evolved, right? So that was the extent to which Paldea Evolved was available. I think there was another bundle too, and actually one that I ended up getting was a combination of Paldea Evolved and Obsidian Flames booster box cases. I think maybe you didn't have to buy anything else, but you did have to buy those two together. So it was tough to get those bundles, at least the Paldean and Obsidian ones. The one where you had to buy a bunch of like Twilight Masquerade and miscellaneous products was a bit easier to get, but at the time it was a lot of dead weight or stuff that you felt like was going to be hard to sell at a profit. So the idea that a reprint, means that a distributor will suddenly have the same level of supply or even anything remotely close to it that they had when the product first launched is certainly false. And I also just think the idea that Pokemon Center is, firing up their presses and, like putting all of the plates, together which I think are destroyed after they print. I mean, I don't know much about printing, but I do remember enough from my days of graphic arts class where they kind of told us, but that was 100 years ago, so I'm sure it's all completely different now. But I'm pretty sure that the basics of, sort of the setup of a print job on a printer are close enough to what they were back then, which is basically, it's very expensive and time consuming and wasteful to, set up a printer to print a product. And I'm sure that it's even more complicated and expensive with current printing technology for, modern TCG and sports cards. So this idea that like the Pokemon Company is firing up, what's probably like a $10 million press operation so that like, maybe 100 accounts or 200 accounts at a distributor can have a couple booster boxes each. Now multiply that times 10 distributors, so it's more than that. But that's just a very, very small quantity of stuff going out there. And I refuse to believe until a Pokemon Center company or Pokemon Company staffer tells me otherwise or is quoted in reliable press otherwise, that in fact, the printing presses are running again. What I do believe is that sometimes, particularly in the past, when the Pokemon Company has an excessive quantity of product at their own distribution facility, which is Pokemon Center, then they will move that to distribution. And I think that's exactly what happened with Paldea Evolved, Obsidian Flames, Temporal Forces, and whatever other products people think are quote-unquote reprinted in the Scarlet and Violet era. I also think that it's likely that like Pokemon, the company, prints up booster packs, puts them in storage, and then decides at a later time like what products, what configurations we'd call that in sports card world, it's going to put those booster packs into. And the way that Pokemon is distributed and productized, makes that very conceivable and possible, in fact, very efficient. In sports cards, there are probably, 10 to 20 different, okay, maybe not that many, 10 to 15 different like configurations of some products. 4 or 5 different types of retail packs. The packs that go into a retail box of cards versus a hobby box versus a jumbo hobby box versus a hanger box versus a hanger pack versus a blah 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 blah. Right? There's like a million types of different packs, and in Pokemon, there's one. There's one kind of pack. That's it. Sometimes there's two if they do like dollar store packs with like 4 cards instead of the usual 10. But I do believe it's possible that Pokemon just runs the printing press to create as many booster packs as they feel like they are going to need, and then how those roll out and in what product forms and formats is decided perhaps down the road when they sort of figure out what the market is asking for. So maybe it's possible that they take some of those packs and they put them in the booster boxes instead of putting them into premium collections, or tins or Pokeballs or whatever else they use to distribute cards. So long way of saying is that I think a lot of people who talk about this Surging Sparks reprint, quote unquote, imagine that suddenly booster boxes are going to be as plentiful as they were on launch, the original launch date of Surging Sparks. And I just cannot, I have no evidence to believe that that is true. Maybe from like Sword and Shield era, something like that, could some evidence, from what happened there could be used to support the idea that there are true reprints that have occurred in recent history with the Pokemon Company. For example, I know there was just a ton of Vivid Voltage out there, and there's still, well, there was until it sold out at Pokemon Center. But the amount of Vivid Voltage out in the world suggests that, perhaps there was, in fact, a true reprint of that product. But I actually think it's easily explained that, the glut of product out there is easily explained by the fact that Vivid Voltage set came out basically during the the COVID boom when Pokemon products were popping off, and it seems like demand was unlimited, and the Pokemon Company may have just said, well, we got to print as much as we can of this. They ended up doing that. The market kind of went soft. People got out of their houses, and suddenly they've got just way too much Vivid Voltage sitting around. So I wasn't collecting or even really paying any attention to Pokemon at that time, so I just don't know, what the case was. But as far as Scarlet and Violet era is concerned, I've never seen anything where all of a sudden at my distributor there's as much, Surging Sparks available as there was during the launch of it, or for any other Scarlet and Violet era set. So, long way of saying, if you think there's going to be a ton of Surging Sparks available for anything approaching cheap, when this reprint, alleged reprint happens, you're crazy. If I'm lucky, I will probably be able to buy, a case or two of booster boxes, and maybe, somebody that's the size of, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the the big, like the biggest sellers. I don't know, Hills Wholesale or something. Maybe they get a fifth of what their, or maybe a tenth of their original allocation of Surging Sparks when it came out, which would be sizable for them. But nobody is going to be selling this at a fire sale, I don't think, at the distribution level, and flippers are not going to get their hands on this except through distribution. So there's going to be a probably slight dip in the price as this becomes a little bit, tiny bit more available than it is now. But it is not going to be anything approaching the, prices at which you could get this when it first came out, the 160, 170, 180. I see this dipping maybe to 240 if there's suddenly a bunch, out through distributors, and then dealers get their hands on it, and maybe some of them want to sell it right away for a profit. But that's about it. And the question is not, will you buy a bunch at 160, which is the MSRP? The question is, are you going to buy some of this when it drops to 240? And honestly, if you think like the current price of 260 is outrageous, I don't see that you're going to suddenly feel like buying a ton of this at 240, unless you are really a true believer in Surging Sparks and you're ready to hold it for, 3, 4, 5 years until it turns into potentially something like Evolving Skies and then, goes over $1,000 a box. But do you have tens of thousands of dollars to put this away for that period of time? And if you do have that money, could you be making a better return elsewhere? Those are questions you have to ask if you're, an investor in Pokemon cards. So, next thing I want to talk about is a video that was posted by another YouTuber that I watch, PokeProfit. He's somebody that, again, I sort of was more into when I just started sort of investing in Pokemon cards, but more recently, I sometimes find myself disagreeing pretty heartily with him. But I always like to give credit to somebody when they're doing sort of a numerical analysis, because even if I disagree with the conclusions based on that analysis, I think there's something to be said for the effort that goes into it and the value that I think, trying to get your brain to understand an analysis, is worthwhile. So I wanted to show this to you guys, and I don't think I disagree with the conclusion of this analysis, but it was very interesting, and I'll link to this video in the description for the video you're watching, if you guys want to check the whole thing out, which I certainly, recommend doing. But basically what this guy did was look at, for every set in the Sword and Shield era, he took the top 3 cards and looked at their value on a date in the past, which was April 11th, 2022. And some of the sets weren't out then. And then he looked at it 1 year later, and then 2 years later, and then the current time. And basically what he was trying to analyze was the thesis that the cards with the biggest value at date X are probably going to be, the set with the 3 most valuable cards at date X are probably going to be the, I apologize, the set with the top 3 cards, was for the value of the top 3 cards in a set at date X is probably going to be, higher than the value of the next most valuable 3 cards in a set. So said another way, with an example, back on 4/11/2022, the 3 top cards in Evolving Skies here, the Umbreon, Rayquaza, and Leafeon you see here, those are the most valuable 3 cards in any of the sets that existed in Sword and Shield at that point. And if you look, 1 year later, 2 years later, or 3 years later, those are still the most valuable 3 cards in any of the sets. So basically, like, if you're the king of the hill in terms of the 3 most valuable cards in your set, you're going to remain the king of the hill. Put another way, it doesn't seem to happen that, like, a set will suddenly, outpace the top set. So if, for example, Evolving Skies, I apologize, by the way, for my inability to explain this, but so back in April of 2022, the top 3 most valuable cards of Evolving Skies were more valuable than the top 3 cards in any other set. And it could have been the case, right, that, I don't know, something in, I think this is Brilliant Stars down here, right? It could have happened that somebody got super excited, or the market got super excited about the Charizard in Brilliant Stars, and that just took off. And suddenly that's the top three cards in that set are more valuable, in 2024 than the top three cards in Evolving Skies. Well, it turns out that never seems to have happened. And the set with the top three most, or the set with the most valuable top three cards, when you add them together, was Evolving Skies in 2022. And in 2025, that still was the top set in terms of the value of the top three cards. And it was also true that the value of those cards, well, actually, it's not true that the value, that the values that they raised the most, that they went up the most, because as you see here, he looks at the percentage change, and it's slightly higher. The top three cards in Fusion Strike went up a little bit more than the top three cards in Evolving Skies, but the value of the top three cards in Evolving Skies is still like way more than the value of the top three cards in Fusion Strike, and so on and so forth down the line of value. So basically the thesis here, which seems to have been borne out by the analysis, is that on any given date, the set with the most valuable top three cards in it, added up, is probably going to be the best or the safest long-term investment in terms of, maintaining value of those cards, and therefore the value of the unopened box in which they reside. So if you take that theory over to here, where he kind of looks at the value of the top three cards in each of the Scarlet and Violet era sets, but also it looks like he's got Crown Zenith in here, which is Sword and Shield. You will see that the top three most valuable cards as of today belong to Surging Sparks at $875.09. Of course, the big one is the Pikachu SIR. Let's see, the other one was Paldean Fates at $636, and Twilight Masquerade at $496 is also quite high. But the value of the top three cards in all of those sets is, quite a bit higher than the top three cards in Scarlet and Violet Base, Obsidian Flames, Paradox Rift, and even Temporal Forces. So the thesis here is that, you should put your money in these sets that have the more valuable top three cards. And by the way, this is sort of an extrapolation, or another way of, looking at the idea that, like, if you just add up the value of all the cards in a set, see which sets are most valuable, you probably have a pretty good answer to what's the best set in an era. But looking at the top three, I think, is sort of interesting, but in slightly different variation on that may lead to different results. It may not, but it's interesting nonetheless. So Paldean Fates, Surging Sparks, Twilight Masquerade, and then, sort of second tier is Paldea Evolved, are the sets to buy. And the rest of the sets are, quite a bit less. Stellar Crown is probably the highest of the rest. I'm kind of a fan of Stellar Crown. It's about to sell out at the Pokemon Center, and I think that's going to go to $200 a booster box. But in any event, so that was interesting to see. But what's kind of most interesting to me, and it's funny because if you go to this video, you'll see my comment on this. Although I commented through my other channel, which is ASMR Sports. But if you look at Prismatic Evolutions, the value of the top 3 cards in this set is like what is that? 4 times, almost, well, okay, 3 times the next highest, which is Surging Sparks, which is crazy. And then, it doesn't stop there. If you look at the top 10 cards, the value is 4619. The next highest is Surging Sparks at 1330. So it's like it gets even more favorable to Prismatic Evolutions if you wrap in the next 7 cards after the top 3. So what this says to me is that Prismatic Evolutions is like head and shoulders above the next best set in the Scarlet and Violet era right now, in the race to, to the mantle of best set in the Scarlet and Violet era, if you look at this metric of top 3 cards or top 5 cards or top 10 cards. It's not even close. So if Prismatic Evolutions is the best set in Scarlet and Violet, which I think is going to, time will tell, prove to be one of the best eras of Pokemon cards, then you have to believe that the value of the unopened is going to be very, very, very strong over time. So right now, the booster, or the ETBs of Prismatic Evolutions, are about 113, and they've been as high as 150. People think there's, touching on issues I've already discussed, people think there's going to be this, massive reprint. The Pokemon Company has said that they are reprinting. They've used the word reprint in their little press release. But, I continue to be skeptical that A, that's going to happen in the way that people think it's going to happen, and that B, that's going to have much of an impact, if anything, on the market, especially when I think already the market is kind of, reflecting the promise of a reprint in this lowered price of 113 versus the kind of launch price of about 140 or 150 for these ETBs. So for me, this seems like a steal, an absolute steal. Right now, I can get these boxes for about $105, through the sort of DealerNet kind of dealer-to-dealer distribution channel. So it's very tempting, I have to say, to want to pick up a lot of those, even though kind of every fiber in me says like $100 plus ETB. Are you out of your effing mind? So I have to reconcile those two things, and maybe you do too. But I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at some of the most valuable ETBs in the history of Pokemon, and if you go back to some of the Sun and Moon ones, I mean, I think the what's the Team Up from Sun and Moon, which is the most valuable set in Sun and Moon. The booster boxes are like, $3,500, $4,000. I think the ETBs of those are probably like $1,500. So ETBs and there's quite a number of ETBs in the Sun and Moon era that are like $800 plus. So, I don't know. It sort of boggles my mind, the potential for Prismatic Evolutions. I mean, the value of the top 10 cards versus, if you compare this to the top 10 cards, which we don't have the data for, but of Evolving Skies, I think the top 10 cards in Prismatic Evolutions are substantially more valuable. Because once you get like past those first 3 in Evolving Skies, there's really not much there of major value, but there's quite a bit of major value after the top 3. in Prismatic Evolutions. So I mean, we also have to figure that the prices of those individual cards could go down. But I think if anything makes them go down, it's going to be sort of a market-wide thing that's also going to make the value of the individual cards in every other set go down, including Evolving Skies. So like its relative position compared to every other set in Pokemon is probably going to be maintained unless, I don't know, for some reason something happens that only decreases the price of singles in Prismatic Evolutions, which, maybe if there's a true reprint that would of Prismatic Evolutions, and that reprint is so like absurd that you see these boxes being fire sold for $30 like, Shrouded Fable is, I guess that would do it. But um, I just can't imagine that happening, quite frankly, given, how Pokemon Company right now is struggling to get products on shelves and to get, their new sets out the door in quantities that aren't going to create gigantic shortages right out of the gate. So anyways, this was something interesting, this analysis that I thought I'd share with you guys, and would love to see your thoughts on it in the comments if you have them. The last thing I want to do in this hour plus long video is take a quick look at the U.S. booster box market, because about a week or a week and a half ago, a lot of stuff, a lot of values, market prices were sort of taking a little breather, little dip. They were either going sideways or dipping down a little bit. And you'd see a lot of videos out there from like Pokemon investment content creators saying like, is this the end? Are things like now over? Are we slowing down? And I thought, well, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. So let's see what we see after this dip here. Obsidian Flames. It was just on my mind because I brought one of these boxes with me to the show. That's put it $160, sold it within like 2 hours, and I thought, well, okay, well, there's at least somebody interested in this stuff at the market price, and it's gone up since then. Most recent sale $169.99. Okay, this one's broken, so they're not going to show us the prices, but yeah, it's back up here. We can see this is basically one north of 170 now, with the high is 190. We can look at the lowest listed. Here's a sealed box, $173, and this is just loose packs, so we ignore that. So basically, yeah, 173 shipped is as cheap as you're going to get a box of Obsidian Flames, which is generally considered to be like the weakest of the Scarlet and Violet era sets at this point, along with Scarlet and Violet base, and it's $173. I know, marching towards 200. So I don't know. This dip did not seem to materialize, at least in the case of that product. Let's look at Stellar Crown, which also started to dip right about January 10th, 11th. And then, it stabilized a bit, kind of back up a touch. See if it's going to show us the reasons. But, yeah, so, last few sales from earlier today, actually the whole day seems to be north of 155. But most recent sales are almost 160. So this one seems to be kind of right on track. And by the way, this is probably going to be the next Scarlet and Violet era booster box that sells out from Pokemon Center. And when that happens, this is going to probably have a very similar trajectory, maybe minus about $10 as Twilight Masquerade, which went up to 200 and then dropped back down to about 179. I should have checked that one out. I might do that at the end here real quick, but that was kind of interesting, and I'd be interested to see if that kind of has leveled out at about like 175, 179, or whether it's kind of heading back up towards 190 on its way to 200. And I see that I don't have anything in that last tab, so I'm going to actually do that right now. We'll check out Twilight Masquerade and see what we see. All right, here we go. So let's see, market at 187. So there's the kind of 190 plus that occurred after it sold. They're not going to show us those sons of guns. But last sold 175. So I do think it's kind of, it looks like it got down to, well, okay, what the heck? That's like 177. Now it's saying it's back up to 184. But the last sold was 175. So I don't know. Let's look at the kind of cheapest. These are loose, damaged. So about 189 is the cheapest you can buy it for, which is right here. So it does seem to be recovering kind of from that 175 point, and probably will stabilize at about like 190, I would guess, before maybe going sideways or either going up or down. I guess those are the only three possibilities, are they? But yeah, I would suggest I would imagine stays pretty strong, and probably that little blip there was like a lot of people said that was because for some reason Best Buy had booster boxes of this stuff available to purchase. I think at like 150, it was like slightly under MSRP. So that that does put probably a few thousand boxes of these out into the marketplace at a pretty low price, and some of those people are flipping them right away. So it drives the price down, and then it kind of sort of resurfaces once that supply is gone through. So that very well may have explained it, but who knows? Could have been anything. All right, folks, that's what we got for today. I hope everybody's doing fantastic, and we'll see y'all next time. Till then, stay relaxed. Bye now.